Welcome everybody to Adobe Live. Just had a bit of a redo there. Let's try this again. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today. We'd also like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm here with the fantastic Josie Young. Can see some people in chat. We've got lots of folks here joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here for an hour. Golden Rose, Festus, Johanna is looking after us, our chat mod. She's going to be sharing super useful links and things like that today. But yeah, if you're watching anywhere else, like over on YouTube, jump over to behance.net/live, say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know how you're going today. But hey, what's up, Josie Young? How are you doing?
Hi again. I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. It's always fun when something bizarre goes awry in the stream. But hey, yeah. So my good friend, we finally got you on Adobe Live. I'm super excited to have you here. We're going to be talking all about design, brand exploration today. But yeah, what is going on with Josie Young in 2021?
I mean, there's lots going on, but also not a lot at the same time. I am now a solo designer, which has been very fun and very interesting. And yeah, I don't know. I think a lot changed last year, and then a lot has been changing since then. So, yeah.
Yep. So the theme is change. Yeah. So, well, we're gonna be talking a lot about branding, a lot about like presentation in Thursday's session. So this is part one of a 2-part series. We got a live chat going here. So say hello. Great to see some familiar faces in chat already. R&B. Bo is here. Great to see you, Bo. Lots of people from the graphic design world, which is really nice. So we're just going to geek out on some design today. But for those who might not be as familiar with your work as I am, maybe you could give us the like TLDR of Josie Young at the moment.
Amazing. Yeah, I might just dive into this because I did, as this feels like a bit of a cooking show a little bit. It's like I'll be doing a lot of like, here's something I prepared earlier.
Awesome.
And so I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to, go full screen here. So hello, Flynn, which we've done. Hello. Adobe Live, which is, the brand, and everyone watching via the internet, like Bo. I'm guessing that's Bo Penton.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yep.
Yay! We're here to talk about brand exploration and presentations, which Flynn already said. And I'll be using some really like super recent work I've done for Queer Table Reads, which is a comedy show. It is this date, and this is, as Flynn also already mentioned, my Adobe Live part 1. So let's go. I'd also like to acknowledge the land that which I live and work on and acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I acknowledge that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I like to put this into my presentations, not only because it's important to acknowledge the history, but I love when I'm working with people from different parts of the country, and we also get to share different parts of the country we're from. And I am curious in the chat if you're from different parts of the country, like what Aboriginal land you're on. Just an easy way to learn. As Flynn mentioned, some introductions. I am an independent designer now of brands, websites, print bits, and digital bits. I also dabble in some writing of headlines, panels, and interviews. I do some more things that happen in the design industry. As we all know, you kind of like dig your fingers into a bunch of different things, and you can kind of have an exploration of that on my website, which is probably linked around the interface that you're on. Earlier this year, I wrapped up 5 years as a designer at Sydney studio Christopher Doyle & Co. And a lot of what I've learned and what I'll be passing along today, I do credit to my time there with the team, with the clients, and with various collaborators that I worked with throughout the years. I do believe that working independently is only really possible due to kind of a massive foundation of working with others. I definitely don't think I would be working independently as, confidently. I mean, I say that confidently, warily, as I am today if I hadn't had the experience I've had working with others. But yeah, that's a photo of me that Wilson, who I used to work with and who I'm good friends with, took recently while I was taking a picture of him. This is a project I did throughout 2020. I put the wrong picture in. I was meant to put the pun one in there. It's a project called Melancholy, like with melons. I took like various types of melons around with me and took photos of them in like sad locations. Anyway, this is a project I worked on while at CD & Co for a photography studio based in Canberra, called Super Photo. This is some Spotify work. Worked on a lot of Spotify work at CD & Co, and this is just kind of one of the many things that I did during my time there. And throwback to this, Flynn, you'll recognize this. This was like 5 years ago now, but this is the branding that I worked on with Chris for ADR. This was the first project I worked on with Chris a very long time ago, but it's still very close to my heart, that one. Yeah, I think that's enough about me, probably. Anyway, the client that I'll be kind of taking you through the project for is a good mate of mine, Jenna Safern. She's a Sydney-based, self-described, this is straight from her Insta bio, joke maker, bad speller, and big lesbian. She's a great pal of mine, as I just mentioned, who I've been helping out with queer comedic design pursuits here and there for a couple of years now. Herself and Brendan Hancock run the wonderful Two Queers Walk Into a Bar, which is a monthly comedy night with the best queer comedians around. Last year, they ran Two Queers Festival, which was amazing. They ran it in like November, so right when everyone was allowed to kind of start venturing out again to things. And at that festival, Jenna produced the inaugural queer table read of the movie But I'm a Cheerleader. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie. I haven't, but it's got Natasha Lyonne, who you may know from like Orange is the New Black, Clea Duvall, amazing cast. I don't think I need to see the movie now that I've seen the queer table read, because that was just incredible. But yeah, I've assisted on design on a lot of the associated bits and bobs, and it's been both fun and funny. This is Jenna. This is Jenna and Brendan being funny. This is more of them being funny, and again and again.
This is outrageous. So this is something that they already do, and then you're going to be helping like expand their brand. Like it just kind of started as something they've done, and it's been really popular, and it's gotten to the point where it needs a brand. Is that kind of where it comes from? Yeah, basically. So Jenna and Brendan started the kind of queer comedy night, just because they both do stand-up comedy, and it came from that there not being a lot of like queer comedy spaces in Sydney, so they just took a punt at it, and it did really well. And Jenna came to me to help out with I think it was for the festival. No, it was a little bit before that, just to help out with some bits. And I was like, oh, can I have a crack at redoing or giving your brand a little bit of a facelift, which is where the logo that you see here came from. And it was just like a really quick, fun thing. And I'll talk a bit more about it moving through, but designing for comedy and not really for like other designers or typical sort of clients has been a really fun and kind of freeing thing to do, I guess. Like it's been a really nice sidestep from the design I'm kind of used to doing, especially when it's for friends and it's for like a community kind of queer thing that I really care about. So yeah, it's been good. And then the festival they ran was excellent, and then there's just been kind of thing after thing that have gone really well. And yeah, when it's for good people and it's really funny, it's just good. But yeah, so the project, Jenna's now produced 2 queer table reads, and she's going to be producing it as a regular show moving forward, because they've been so funny and successful. And as things go, things need branding, or like she wanted more posters, and I was like, what about branding? So I am doing this project for Jenna as a pro bono one, because it ticks the boxes that pro bono projects
should.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to be in a position at the moment to have the sort of freedom to do that. But yeah, I care about it. It's fun. I get to turn it into a fun folio piece, and the people behind it are good eggs. I feel like that's the sort of like matrix of what should constitute a pro bono project.
That's like a lot of boxes ticked.
As you were saying that, I just like flicked to this picture. These are just some pictures from past queer table reads. This was from the first one, like during one of the make-out scenes from the movie when COVID was still sort of like a thing. Like as a joke, they put face shields on so they could do the make-out. Right. Just, you know, funny, lots of laughs. It's very like budget theatre, but it's the most hilarious situation to witness.
Nice.
So good. They also live stream these events, so you can watch them from home, which I think is great. But yeah, so a little bit about what to expect when you're expecting a comprehensive Adobe Live. My aim with these two lives is less about the volume of my own exploration and how to have ideas, and more about how I actually go about exploration for the presentation itself.
Yeah.
So more about the stage where once you've got some ideas rolling, what you do to build them into what could like constitute as presentable exploration. I think everyone has their own ways of coming up with ideas, and I don't think I really have a clue how to tell you how to do that. You know, I could give you some tips, but I do think there are some processes you can follow to help you test the ideas you're having, to help you bring them to life. So the following slide is an overview of the things I'm aiming to cover, while taking you through this whole process. It's not really in any particular order, just the stuff I hope to cover at least once. So today I'm going to talk about folder setup, document setup, learning about the client, quick exploration tips about thinking now and crafting later, stress test assets, which sounds really intense, but it's not. Exploration documents as kind of pre-presentation documents, some go-to territories to kind of dive into when you're exploring, copy as a tool, imagery as a tool, and some resources. And then on Thursday, when it gets to the presentation stage, about making decisions, writing for presenting, tailoring your presentations per client, the order of presenting, templates for presenting, mock-ups, and I say rollout and rationales in inverted commas because there are ways around doing these things that don't feel super concrete, that you can kind of have a bit of an open conversation with the client about.
Cool. Wow, that's a lot.
It sounds like a lot, and maybe it is, but it'll probably go quickly, and then you'll revisit this list and be like, where did she mention that stuff? And maybe I'm lying. Who knows?
Let's see what happens. It's live, you know.
Let's see what happens. Does this little face look familiar? Because we're going to go to Finder and see.
You freaked me out a little bit then. I'm like, what is happening with this stream now? Like, just the giant Finder icons coming up.
No, that was me. I did that on purpose.
No, I
just wanted to talk a bit about, I mean, you're seeing all my folders now. This is what my folders look like. This is something that from an early age, and I say that like from uni, that's not really an early age, I used to get really stressed about like the way I filed things, and then it's something that Chris had a very good structure behind, and it's something I've taken with me. But I do think that as early as exploration phase, having a good folder structure and then a good file setup can really help you kind of not really have to think too much about this. Like if you've got good groundwork here, then you can just kind of do the work and not stress too much about it. Obviously, everyone's got their own ways of doing these things, but the very first thing I do with any project is just kind of copy and paste a folder structure that I've already got ready to go. And it just starts with the client name, project name as the parent folder. And then I usually have variations of this depending on the project, like usually an admin folder where, you know, quotes, invoices, that sort of thing go, a brief and supplied folder. So if you've written a brief, or if the client's written a brief, or they've sent you any documents that you need to redo, anything like that would go in there. Images, so if they've sent you any headshots, or if you've got exploration images that you kind of want to test, I chuck that in there. And I sub all of them accordingly, if you can't tell by this sort of situation. But the most important one is the design folder, which I split out into exploration, presentations, and development. And then with the files themselves, I actually set up files that are all the same size as each other. So I'll usually have an Illustrator file and an InDesign file that are the same size for exploration. I do this because my presentation file is 16 by 9, and it just means that when I get to the later stage of exploration, if there's anything I then think is good to go as is from the exploration file, I can just paste in place straight into the presentation file, and I don't have to do too much resizing or double handling. It just means it's a quicker sort of process. And as I sort of mentioned earlier, exploration documents as sort of pre-presentation documents, which I'll talk more about soon. It just kind of keeps that process a little bit smoother and has you in the mindset of presenting earlier on. My Illustrator documents are a little bit looser. Like, I don't hold myself too tight to that. But if I'm in InDesign doing exploration, there's a few more rigid ways I go about doing things so that I kind of work towards presenting almost from the very beginning.
That's cool. I really like that.
Yee. Anyway, I need a sip of water. I'm parched, so I'm going to do that if you want to say things while I sip some water.
Well, I love that. It's something that I've known, certainly, like, for a very short period of time. We were working in the same building, like with Christopher Doyle and Co. And I was always really blown away. Like, I could always tell that, like, it was an ethos of the studio to like really carefully like plan and name files. Like, there was never a like hard drive with final version 7 or anything like that. Like, I feel like that was like blasphemy. And I always took that away. Like, had that advantage of just kind of going, oh, they're really organized. Maybe I need to sort my stuff out.
It does like help being organized, because if you've got, I approach a lot of things in my life like this. Like, if you've got the small things organized, then they won't stress you out when you go back to them. There's a plane. I'm sorry. This is Sydney in a west flight.
That's right. Right now. We don't control we don't control the planes. That's fine.
Or do we? No. Good joke. Yeah, being organized in those little ways, because it doesn't take a lot to set up that stuff well at the beginning, and then it's just a matter of like, as you move through, it's such small things to kind of keep on top of. But yeah. Here's a sneak peek of the presentation that I'll be going through on Thursday. But I'm going to skip to page 13 of it, because this is the kind of quick overview of the getting to know the client thing. And I'll talk more about this on Thursday, but it is very tailored to the client. As I mentioned, she's a friend of mine, so the last 3, fun, sexy, gay, they're are very tailored to her and the fact that we're friends, and it was a funny, very laid back time. But I will talk through the fact that that music just got very loud.
Did it? I'll turn it down a bit. We don't need it.
I mean, it's a bop, but maybe when I said fun, sexy, gay, it was like, yes.
Yeah, it just went, whoa. Like, someone call my name. Yes. Let's roll.
You say we're ready to party. The headshots, sales, affordability, printability are very important things when it comes to designing for this client. I'm going to jump over to Illustrator because I've got some kind of easy ways to explain this in there. That's mainly through some past examples of what has been done for this client.
Right.
Lynn, I'm so sorry, but that music is still a touch too loud. Do you mind?
Yeah, I just turned it off. We don't need
Look
it.
at me, I'm such a diva. But I'm a diva. So the first show that Jana produced for Queer Table Reads was But I'm a Cheerleader, and the goal with it was to just kind of make it as funny and kind of slapdash rip-off of the original movie poster. So on the left is the original movie poster, and on the right is the show poster featuring headshots, the show details, the cast details, ticket information. All of that stuff is really important to producing and advertising these shows, and it's something that kind of needed to carry through. When I mentioned printability, I mean that Jenna will be getting posters printed for all of these shows at the kind of cheapest places that she can, because there's not a lot of money behind this sort of stuff.
Yep.
So when using colour, it's something that just has to be considered, that, Officeworks or Quick Copy might be the place that they get printed at. So complex colours, RGB just isn't a consideration for this. Like, colour like that really has to be considered. Things that usually wouldn't be ideal in, design for designers and really, really graphic designing type of thing, like big headshots, multiple of them with big type on one poster have to be considered as well. But I think in designing for comedy, it's a nice kind of, I know this isn't like, this wouldn't be something that designers would be like, okay, that's great design. Like, no, it's not, but design isn't for designers. When it comes to stuff like this, design is for the client. And if it serves the purpose of what they need, and it feels good for them and they love it, that's, us doing our jobs at the end of the day. And that's what matters. I sat with Jenna and designed this throughout a day, and she loved it. It did the job. The show sold out. It was great. So it's a little bit of a different take on the kind of design that I'm more used to doing, but it's been really fun. The second show was 10 Things I Hate About You. This is a different take on dodgy photoshopping, but it's kind of like towing that line between, like, it's got to look like dodgy photoshopping to a point where you kind of don't notice it, but you do a double take. You're like, hang on a minute, that's not the real poster.
Right.
And again, we had to feature the headshots. So it's got to be like bad design on purpose.
Yeah.
But again, it's got to do all those things I mentioned. Like, it's got to have all the information nice and clear. It's got to have the cast. It's got to have ticket information. It's got to have the headshots. It's got to have the title. It's got to ring true enough to the original poster that you know what it is. But yeah, it's got to feel silly, and it does. So considering all of those things, but moving it forward into kind of a branded space, I spoke with Jenna about the fact that it would be cool to be able to post about queer table reads without needing a show to kind of anchor on. So kind of when you've got brand assets and a brand system, being able to talk about queer table reads without, having the next show to actually have imagery for it. So let me just go back to my doc to make sure I know where I'm up to. Yes, exploration phase. Great. This is where we're at. This is kind of like one of those things that it will depend on the job and the person you're working with. But I did very quickly kind of come up with some sketches and some thoughts for this. I kind of wanted to work out some sort of a brand system for this project where it could live on its own and talk about its own kind of like, I guess, theatre presence and comedy presence, but it could also house the shows moving forward. And because this was a pro bono job, I liked the idea that there could be some sort of like table device, frame device that could flex out into multiple different things. So I did some really quick sketching, which is always where I start. I always start in the notebook and did this sort of thing, like, this is meant to be a poster with like a table on it with my really bad sketches. Like, I'm not a good sketcher by any means, but it's a really good, quick way to get some ideas down.
Yeah.
This sort of thing, like, could the type live on different surfaces of the table? Or is it simpler? Is it more 2D? And, does the table just frame different sections of a page or of an area. And I was like, no, I like the 3D one again. And then I was like, oh, is it just two sides of a table? Is it like the ones that kind of tuck under the couch and you can eat your dinner on? Obviously not. It's just like, these are really bad sketches, but it was enough for me to be like, all right, cool. Let's like play around with some references as well.
Yeah.
Here's some really cool blocky color, potential bit of a weird 3D object, some nice references of how kind of brand systems can flex on different page sizes with type and imagery, as well as that. But yeah, I moved quite quickly with this one because I had an idea in my head that I knew I wanted to run with. And because I had been working on it for quite a while, and the usual process of it was, we've got a show, we've got the headshots, they need to be photoshopped together. And in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, it'd be cool to develop some sort of brand system for this. So when you've got that sort of project already happening, it does kind of move quickly. But coming back to kind of the affordability thing, making choices around type is something that really needs to be considered as well. Type can be something that becomes really expensive really quickly. And sometimes you can do a load of type exploration. I'm going to go onto these sites in a second because I think they're really good resources for doing some really quick type exploration and finding typefaces you might not already know about. But typically when I do type exploration, I just type various things out, whether it's the brand name or some headlines, some body copy, and try them in a bunch of different typefaces. But for this project specifically, because there isn't much of a budget at all behind it, I knew it either had to be a free font or a really affordable font.
Yeah. Because the client needs to buy the font, right? Like.
Yes,
yeah.
Sorry, I should have explained that. The client will need to license the font, or I'll need to license the font on the client's behalf. So either way, it needs to be affordable. And, so Circular by Line 2, for example, beautiful font, but costs a mozza.
Yeah.
Can I say mozza? Is that?
Well, I can't take it back, so yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money.
a lot.
Yeah, I need to be educated on that word. I think I haven't said it in a long time, so now I'm just like, maybe not. This is my website. I wasn't meant to be on that page yet, so I'm going to go to Typewolf. Just going to quickly click through some sites that are really good references for finding typefaces.
As we do that, because you showed your ambitious list of how many things to go through today, I'll just let you know that we've got 25 minutes left.
What?
Yeah.
That went so quickly. Okay, amazing. Typewolf is good. Fonts in use is good.
Site
Inspire is good.
This is good. Check it out.
You can screenshot these. Oh, some CD and co-work. That's good. I also pin a lot to Pinterest and come back to it quite regularly. But the typeface I ended up using for this project, go away little thing at the top of the screen, is a typeface called Radial by Gradient Type Foundry, and it will set you back $50 a weight, which isn't too bad. And then I'm just going to go through this quickly now because I've been talking so much. Great. But yeah, this one's a super nice typeface. It's Radial by Gradient Type Foundry. The things about figuring out the weight to use is stuff that can kind of be figured out later. It's that thing I mentioned before of like, what did I say? Something now, craft later. Test now, craft later. Right. But the kind of main reason behind kind of leaning into this typeface is, one, the price is good, but it also does other things like feeling really bold, having a good amount of kind of weight variation, feels really nice and friendly, and has a few nice little quirks that feel good. So in Illustrator, which I didn't show you before, was bringing some of these ideas to life really quickly. So I do a lot of exploration in InDesign, but if the tools kind of feel quite restrictive sometimes, because InDesign doesn't have obviously all of the kind of illustrative perks of Illustrator. That's it. Then I come over here to do it. So I really quickly kind of like tried a few of these things and I was like, that's impossible to read. Let's not do that. But I played around with this 3D shape until I got to a point that I was like, okay, this is starting to kind of feel like something I can play around with. I set the type nice and straight, and then I made it a little bit different, and then, you know, built this out into an object where this type was inset on one of the sides of the, you know, table, which could also live on this side.
Yeah, cool.
And that's the kind of base shape. And on the whole kind of test now, craft later thing, like there are things in here that I will want to craft later if this concept is chosen. Like I'm not comfortable with how close this is sitting here, and I might want to set this in a different weight. But I'm like, you know what? It's okay for now. Let's stress test this and see if it works across assets.
So at this point, you don't want to like agonize over these small details because the client might have feedback, or there might be a different, you know, it could evolve later on. Like if that's not chosen, you're essentially kind of like wasting your time by sweating the small stuff instead of pushing through, going through more exploration while you have that time.
Exactly. And it's all that kind of stuff that you can talk to the client about. You can be like, look, we might change the colors here, or we might do this a little bit differently, but essentially this is the approach. And it does depend on the client. Like some clients might be expecting a more polished finish, so therefore you would take a bit of a different approach. But in this instance, that's not the case. So it's about kind of iterating quickly. So this table has been prepared earlier in Illustrator. An idea as well for the kind of shorthand of it. So if Queer Table Reads was being featured within another event and they needed to kind of be a partner logo with something else, you could just strip it back to this sort of a thing. But it has this sort of flex in it, in that it can be a small kind of square looking table. The actual table legs or the top of the table could go behind one of them and kind of have this sort of impossible object sort of feel to it, and it could become taller or it can become wider. So there's like a nice sort of flex to it, and obviously it can live in lots of different colors. Oh, you can't see the one on the left very well, but that doesn't matter. So one of the first stress test sort of assets to start building out is A-size posters, because they can obviously then be resized really easily into real posters, or I like to think of them sometimes as the before the Instagram story version of Instagram stories. Like it's this sort of thing that you can talk to in presentations as well. Like this may become, you know, an event poster, or it might become an Instagram story, or it might become, you know, an outdoor piece of advertising, depending on the client. But, you know, you grab the table, you whack it on, you make up some copy to sit around it. So the example here is, and like where I mentioned before, copy as a tool, you can literally just make stuff up in this instance. Like here I've made up the fact that they might be doing Clueless as the next movie.
Okay.
And that it will be on May 24th at Carriage Works. None of that's true, but it's okay to make stuff up to test the assets and to test the typeface. And you kind of lean into the sort of language and the sort of advertising material that would exist to be like, cool, does this work together like this? Again, you put the tall, skinny one in there, and you talk about a different sort of play. Like, what do you call a silly soliloquy? Beck Shaw doing Hamlet. If you don't know, Beck Shaw is an incredible comedian. And for this instance, we'd call her Beck Shakespeare. I did ask her permission before doing this, and she, if you know Beck, she's very like dry, and she was like, ha, I love it. And I'm like, sick. I win on that one. That's nice. Good. Or we get the long table down here. And here's where we use a bit of imagery as a tool as well. We say the Last Supper. I mean, table read of 2021, announcing soon, BYO Supper. So we can start to kind of flex these tools out and see if they work, which, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm satisfied these work. But when it comes to actually working with the original purpose of this kind of expansion of the tools, would it work when it comes to doing the dodgy Photoshop version? And if Clueless is the example, how would we do that with the new tools, but also with the old way of doing the dodgy Photoshopping? We can stretch the frame into like a skinnier, full page version of that and build in the assets like this, for example.
Cool. So it's again, like a container around, just you could just put in the artwork. You could actually like get that together very quickly, right? Like
Yeah,
using the container
indeed.
and then popping in the artwork behind it. Yeah, it's really cool.
That's it. And like, obviously, I haven't photoshopped in any headshots here. I've taken a cast list from a past poster. So all of the content on here is completely made up, but it's a very quick way to just test the assets. And that's why I like calling them stress tests is a good way, because this could also very quickly fall apart and be like, no, actually, this doesn't work. Like, we need to rethink how this is going to work. But in terms of fitting in the headshots, you just park them you just park them at the table. I was like, I've got the rainbow wheel. Is it going to freak out on me? And you grab some famous lines from the movie and use that as the headline potentially. Again, just kind of thinking of different ways to approach this stuff to kind of move it into the next phase of its kind of grown up life, I guess. So in the past, we just did the movie poster, but it's just like, okay, maybe in the future we can have two versions of the poster.
Yeah.
One with a line from the movie and one, that's just the main poster. Again, we take a famous line, we sit it at the table, and it could look like that. And that's another thing I'll talk about more on Thursday, but just kind of talking about all these things as it could be like this, it could be like that, as potentials rather than like absolutes.
Yeah. And I noticed just
media,
very quickly on the stress test, I noticed that there's not like lorem ipsum in there or anything like that. Like, so it's important to literally just try to think what kind of, what text, what information needs to be on, a poster and putting it all in as part of that process. Like, do you have to think about that at that point, or do you ever use like lorem ipsum or throw in dummy text or anything like that?
I do sometimes. If it's small body text, I do use lorem ipsum sometimes. But if you're doing like big headlines, it is nice to kind of go to that level of like, what could it be? And think about that. Here it's kind of easy because there's content to already pull from, and it's not all custom written. I guess it's a line from the movie. So again, it does depend on the client, but it is nice if there's time to think about that level of detail, because it's easier then for the client to understand how it might work.
Yeah.
In a real life application, because sometimes lorem ipsum or placeholder copy can kind of bewilder someone and they might not be able to see how that application would work, which is, I think, copy as a tool in that sense. And it's something that like I've really worked hard on throughout the years, is like working on that as a skill to develop into design work, because it is quite important in my opinion. Social posts, coming soon to a table near you, like doing little things like this. Again, taking that example from earlier, but having a bit of a different take on it. Talking about the host, advertising the event, again, in a square format, and that's Jenna there. So using the device in a bit of a different way with type in it as well. But yeah, so in my opinion, concept 1 has survived the stress test, and I'm going to blitz through concept 2 because it's not that different. It's a version of like how to make 2 concepts when you don't have a budget, you don't have much time, and you kind of already have an okay idea. You do the same thinking, but you execute it sort of differently. So obviously the name's the same, that's not going to change. But we like the table, and we like the fact that it can frame various applications. So we build it out in a similar manner, but just executed quite differently. This is a much more simple graphic execution of it. But it's a good way to do things when you do have those constraints of budget and time. It's just like, okay, there's maybe a solid idea here. And I did want to mention as well, I don't think there always needs to be like necessarily a smile in the mind, really clever sort of graphic design, like clever word mark with the Q, the T, and the R, like especially for something that purpose is marketing like this, like marketing shows. Sometimes it just needs to be a really bold graphic system that allows content to be able to like sit within it. And that itself together works as, branding as a system.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can build out in a similar way. Something that's good as well to do the stress test is once you've built out one set of stress tests is use the same content across the different concepts you're doing.
Right.
Because
That's
if
great.
you've got it working on one, it should then also hopefully work on your other concepts. And if it doesn't, that's probably a pretty good sign that it's failing the stress test.
Yeah, cool.
I'm going to get a rainbow wheel. No, I'm not. There we go. For the clueless posters, it's a much simpler application, but still, it does the job. We've got our cast sitting at the table. And we've got our quote nice and big.
Cool.
And we've got some social posts. So you can see it kind of like, this is basically what my exploration docs look like.
Yeah.
They're a bit messier than this, but working in a 16:9 document for my exploration means that once I get it to a point that I'm like, all right, this is working, I can just paste in place straight in to the presentation document. And it also means that, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I love the thinking of the client, like so much, like throughout this entire thing, like trying to think about how to kind of keep it simple, like how easy it is to have that frame in here and then just drop a headshot in or drop something in or do a bit of type. Like you quickly get these around, and if you find yourself in 2 years still doing updates for free as well, it also makes it nice and simple, nice simple system for yourself as well if you're the designer.
It also means so say you're about the morning of the presentation and you're like, oh, I need to change things. You don't have a bunch of separate assets. Like everything is then here live and ready to go. You could be like 3 tickets left. You can just type over it straight in there and it's all kind of live and ready to go. It depends obviously what you're working with. If you're working with much more complex graphics, it becomes a bigger and slower document to work with, but it's a case by case basis. For
sure. And there's a lot of love in chat for the gradient. So I don't know if you're crowdsourcing at the moment, just some feedback, but a lot of love for the gradients.
Oh, thank you. Very quick, easy way to do gradients like that, if you want to know, if we've got time for it. So I've got 2 objects here. One of them's solid. The other one was solid, pink. But you just go Shift G, which is gradient feather, and then just do whatever direction. Put them on top of each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can do things in InDesign really quickly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's back. Woo.
I'll let you know as well. We've got about 10 minutes left. So
okay, that's not too bad. I got through all that really quickly.
Nice.
Okay, concept 2, in my opinion, has survived the stress test. This is basically the end. So now we can just kind of meander back through it.
Cool.
Good. Yeah. See, we did that stuff.
We did it. Wow.
Look, so that's good. I can go back to the things that I wanted to spend more time on now.
Awesome.
Ooh. I mean, are there any questions happening? Let's maybe do that.
Yeah, let us know. We've got a little bit of time left over. I think maybe you could show that InDesign trick again very quickly.
Of course. I was so stressed about time. So I can absolutely do that.
That was before I told you we had a little bit more time left over. So if you could show us that little trick again.
Actually, I might do it in this document. So this is the exploration document that basically you'll see very soon is kind of the same as the presentation document. It just doesn't have all the little folio bits of text around it. It's just like a messier version of the presentation document, but because it's the same size and all of that, it's easy to paste things in place into the presentation document and be like, we've got a presentation. This is my pages panel. Let's go here to where I was. Oh no, that's Jenna's number. Please don't see that. I was like, I thought I deleted that. Okay, let's say we want to make this this a gradient one. So I'm just going to go to the stroke and let's make it yellow, right? So I'm going to copy that object, and I've changed my paste in place shortcut in InDesign to the same as Illustrator because otherwise I get really confused. Right. So I've changed mine to Command F. So I just paste that in place, and I'm going to change it to pick a color.
So that's the same object and it's on top of each other. We can't see that because it's literally exact
Yeah.
same yellow object on top. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'll move it there for now.
Cool.
Let's go orange. I'm going to grab
not?
both of them and put them, make a master object and realign them together. And then if I grab the top one only, do Shift G, which is this tool. Why am I'm literally pointing at my computer.
Pointing at the screen.
Arm.
Which one? Can you just point at? That's awesome. I do that all the time. It makes you feel any better. I like always use I switch from like PC to like iPad all the time, and I often find myself like swiping my PC screen, and I just hang my head in shame. And thankfully, there's never anybody around to see it.
Like, make sure you can see it by literally there's everyone in the room with me. Look at the screen. This one here is a gradient feather tool. So if you do that, and like, you don't have to hold down Shift unless you want like a really straight gradient. And this is clear, so we don't want a straight gradient. We want, yeah. And then you just do that. Or if you're like, don't like that angle, going to go more that way. Or we want a shorter one. Or we want, we only want a little bit of lighter orange over there. Or we want more in the middle. Yeah.
Super easy. Do you use like InDesign a lot, like to create the assets? Like I would have thought like a common process might be, I'm going to do all my design assets. Here's my logo. Here's like 10 different versions of the logo, whatever. Grab all of that and then put it in whatever software I might be using for my presentation. So InDesign, or I don't know, maybe had to throw it in PowerPoint or something like that. But it looks like is a lot of this editable, or some of it's editable? It's
all in InDesign.
It's all in InDesign. Wow.
Yeah. So let's duplicate this page and make some new posters, because it's all in here.
It's all in InDesign.
And I so if I hit Command K and my increments, I set them to like 2.5, so I can kind of fake my margins on these posters that are within a page really easy. So again, it's that thing of like craft later. So I might go like, if I hold down Shift on a 2.5 increment, it will times it by 10. And then that roughly feels like a good margin there. But like, say if I just move this out of the way for now, and I'm like, cool, I actually want like I want this to hit the roof, basically. So I'm going to lock the background object here. And then I'm going to grab the direct selection tool and select the top of this table that I've made. And I never click on objects in the right order straight away. So wait for that little thing to show up. Yep, there we go. Grab it. Hold down Shift, and then I just like drag it up. So let's say, yeah, we like that. That's nice. And let's say for this poster, I want to like put the type in the legs and make it smaller, maybe this size. So just eyedrop that from over there. I was on some posters angling that type, and I can't remember the degree, so it could kind of match that. So I'm just going to check. Okay, so I had it on a skew and an angle of 20 and 20. My computer's being very slow, so bear with me. So if I go 20 there and 20 there, boom.
Nice.
Long. Honestly, I don't know what to write right now.
Long leg table.
Long leg table.
Super literal.
I mean, that does not stack well because of the ascenders and descenders, but we're just trying some things here. Yeah.
That's cool.
So I edit everything in InDesign.
That's cool. It's kind of incredible. Like it's a lot of process to do. So I've got a question from Cheryl from chat, which I think I know the answer to now. What's your favorite Adobe program to use? I'm guessing InDesign's your jam, right?
It's Bridge. No, it's no. I actually always open Bridge. Like there's a shortcut I always do, and somehow Bridge is like, "Hey," and I'm like, "No."
It's my time to shine.
It's definitely InDesign. Yeah, it's InDesign.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think it's the one I've spent the most time in. So it's the one I know the best.
Yeah.
But it's still such a mystery to me in so many levels. But yeah, I think I've just like learned enough about it to know how to do a lot of things I can do in other programs in there, and it's the one I can work the fastest in. So
Yeah. Makes sense.
yeah.
Cool. And I guess final question, because we only got a couple minutes left. So from Johanna, lovely to hear that you're taking on pro bono work. Do you give yourself one pro bono client per month, or is it like take it as it comes, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I try to not do a lot of it because I can't really afford it. It's like a lot of time and energy to spend on work because I end up putting a lot of my time into it because I really care about it. It's kind of, so Jenna's stuff is kind of the only stuff I do pro bono. And, you know, if I am ever in a position where I'm earning enough otherwise and have enough time otherwise, then I, you know, am open to it. But yeah, it's kind of, it's that balance that I try and strike. I would obviously love to be in a position where I am, you know, financially comfortable enough to give more. But yeah, it's tricky. I'm really lucky to be able to, you know, do this one though.
Yeah, that's super cool. And that takes us to time. So thank you, Josie.
Wow, that went so fast.
Crazy fast, right? Like it always does. But great hanging out with you. We're going to be back with part 2 in 48 hours. So it's Thursday in the morning for us over here. If we're in the US, it'll be Wednesday afternoon. We hope you can join us for that. Thank you, everyone in chat. Thanks for the great questions and hanging out with us today. We'll see you in 2 days for part 2 with Josie Young. Thanks, Josie.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lynn.
See you later.